Shalom, this is Yair Davidiy, speaking to you from the land of Israel. I represent Brit-Am, Hebrew awareness. Today we're about to speak concerning the prophecy of Zechariah chapter 12, where he describes how in the end times all the nations of the earth, or most nations of the earth, will come and besiege Jerusalem. I understand this whether it's literal or figurative, whether Jerusalem represents only the area of Jerusalem, or all the area of Israel, or a portion of the area of Israel. These are all questions for the future. But the simple meaning of the verses can be taken as they are, because they are descriptive of something that could happen, that is, in a sense, already happening before our eyes. We have the state of Israel, we have the Jewish people, and all the nations of the earth, to some degree or other, are against the state of Israel. They're all against us, to some degree. What I mean by to some degree is that here and there we have those Gentiles who are in favour of the state of Israel, who help the state of Israel, who have consideration for the state of Israel. Peoples in the West who, despite their criticisms of the state of Israel, want the state of Israel to survive, want it to be healthy and strong, and support it. And this is especially true in the USA, but it's also found amongst English-speaking peoples everywhere. Not that all of them love the Jews, not that all of them support the state of Israel. A lot of them don't, but a good portion of them do. And also amongst other nations of the earth, we find supporters of the state of Israel all over the place. In all the world we have supporters we find those who support the state of Israel amongst all peoples, but they are noticeably present amongst Western nations, or the offshoots of Western nations, Australia, New Zealand, Canada. Also, historically in the past, in the recent past, in Scandinavia, Sweden, Finland, Denmark, Norway, even those nations nowadays, or at times have been vehemently against Israel. We have had supporters there at certain stages, at certain times, and not so long ago. Also the Netherlands, Belgium, France, there were times when these nations also helped Israel when it needed it. Switzerland even, and the UK. And these nations are those amongst whom we find descendants of lost in tribes of Israel. We do. We believe the lost in tribes are amongst those peoples, and they comprise a significant proportion of the population in those areas, and they help define, help delineate, help give rise to the national character of those nations. And that was the task that the Almighty wanted them to do, and that's what they have done, and they still have a task to fulfill. God willing, they will continue to do so, and that they will be healthy and wealthy and go along the right track, even though they now and again frequently tend to depart from it. You can leave that as it is. Most nations of the earth are against the state of Israel. Most countries in the world are against the state of Israel. We have the United Nations. The United Nations is supposed to represent all the countries of the earth. Most recent figures we have are from 2013. That is a good while, more than 10 years ago. Nevertheless, they are relevant, and they show that of all resolutions against the state of Israel are equal in number to resolutions against the nations in the rest of the world combined. In other words, the United Nations considers the state of Israel to be committing crimes against I don't know who, against some mythical Palestinian people or some real live Palestinian people. It depends how you interpret the reality. And the state of Israel is believed to be offending these people, doing things against them. That is equal in importance in their eyes, or more important in their eyes, than anything anyone else does to any other country all over the world. That is according to the degree of attention that they pay to it, and the degree of energy they spend upon it in condemning the state of Israel in the United Nations Human Rights Council. Those against the state of Israel, EU member states, that is Europeans, some of whom are also descend from the 10 tribes of Israel, and some of whom aren't, some who are dominated by elements from Edom, some, or from elements from other Gentile nations, that they're all together. EU member states are likely to vote against the state of Israel to twice as much as all the rest of the world combined. In other words, we have problems. We have problems in the world. They're going to introduce resolutions against concerning China. China is oppressing the Uyghurs, a Muslim minority, large millions of people, a large Muslim minority in China. Also, China is doing things against its other citizens, against its minorities. You have also Venezuela, who is doing things contrary to human rights principles. We have Saudi Arabia, we have Cuba, Turkey, which also oppresses its minorities. We have Pakistan, in which Christians go in fear of their lives and are killed and tortured and all kinds of bad things done to them. We have Vietnam, where two human rights are not respected. Algeria, and we have numerous other countries, 175 other countries, all of whom have problems in them, and in nearly every case the problems of these other countries, even from an objective point of view, are far worse than anything in the state of Israel. Even if you believe the anti-Israeli propaganda, in its worst case scenarios, and it's not to be believed, believe me, it is not to be believed, it is unbelievable, it's not credible, it's not true, it is mainly made up. Even if you were to believe it, it would not justify the amount of energy the condemnations made against the state of Israel. This can only be explained due to anti-Semitism, hatred of the Jews. The Jews have been hated. The Jews believe in one God, the Jews believe in the Torah, that is the Bible. The Bible sets certain standards of behavior which the rest of the world do not want to abide by, but they cannot deny it. And therefore they attack the Jews. The Jews represent the power of God, the conscience, human conscience in this world. And because of that, the Jews are hated. And so this is what we have. Also, many nations of the world somehow or other feel inferior to the Jews, have an inferiority complex. I don't know, they have all kinds of problems, and they put all their problems, to take all of their problems together and somehow put them on the Jews, blame the Jews. And that's what Zechariah and that is what Zechariah, the prophet Zechariah, is describing. That is what the prophet Zechariah describes in chapter 12 of the book of Zechariah. And the only real friend that Israel has is the USA, even though other nations here and there also upon occasion extend the hand of friendship, of sudden pangs of good conscience, of realizing that they have to do the right thing and that the state of Israel does need to be supported. And the nations who feel this way, even upon occasion, are mainly those that we find members of the Lost 10 Tribes to be, have been predominant in historical times. Zechariah says, chapter 12, verse 1, he says in plain English, an essay concerning the word of the Lord against Israel. Thus says the Lord God, who stretches out the heavens, lays the foundation of the earth, and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. It says, I will make Jerusalem a cup of drunkenness to all the surrounding peoples when they lay siege against Jerusalem. In Hebrew it says, Kosat Tareela. Tareela means poison. A cup, a brimful cup of poison. That's what Jerusalem will be to all the peoples of the earth. And this is what Rabbi Moshe David Valley in the 1600s explained this verse to mean, that the nations of the earth will pour into their cup, the nations of the earth will concentrate all the malice, all the hatred, all of their own problems, their poison. They'll put all their poison together in one cup and make a chalice of all their poisonous. Everything that is wrong with them, everything that has happened to them, everything negative about them, they will put it in one glass, one goblet to drink it, and they will blame the Jews in Jerusalem for it. That is what they were doing. That's what they've always done. They always blame the Jews for all their own faults. And this is how Zechariah describes them as doing. Zechariah lived about 300 BCE, and he knew what he was talking about. Even then, it was the same phenomenon existed. Zechariah says, when they laid siege against Judah and Jerusalem, that the nations of the earth will lay siege against Judah and Jerusalem. They will blame the Jews for their own faults, for their own perversions, for their own corruption. They'll put all the blame on the Jews, the good old Jew boy. And they will want to take it out on him, and they will come in siege against Jerusalem. They will say, boy, let's get together. Let's attack the Jews. Let's solve all our problems. Kill the Jews. Destroy Jerusalem. Liberate the oppressed that the Jews are supposed to be oppressing. And we will solve all our problems. That's what they will say in the end times. And that's what they are saying now. That is how they are acting now. And also says, so too will Judah be in siege against Jerusalem. And it'll be Moishe David Valley interprets this to mean that there will be apostate Jews. That is, Jews who change their religion, or Jews who identify with the Goyim, with the Gentiles who join them. And they too will join the Gentiles and come up and support them and back them up and guide them and be with them when they attack Jerusalem. And we have that phenomenon today. We have renegade Jews all over the world who identify with enemies of Israel and wanted to see the destruction of the state of Israel and work against the state of Israel. And this is a natural phenomenon. It happens everywhere. All nations have people who betray them. And amongst the Jews it is worse, because the Jews are in a unique situation that facilitates this type of attitude. And so it happens. Moishe Valley in Padua, northern Italy, in the 1600s, he said that they too will join the Gentiles in these end times, and they too will be amongst those who besiege Jerusalem. And Zechariah continues, and it shall happen in that day that I will make Jerusalem a very heavy stone for peoples, and all who would heave it away will be surely cut in pieces. In other words, they will try to lift up the stone, and the stone will cut them. Even though they're all united against Jerusalem, they will suffer from their own unification. It also says in that day, verse 4, it says, the Lord, I will strike every horse with confusion, and its rider with madness. I will open my eyes in the house of Judah, and I will strike every horse of the peoples with blindness. That is, they will come up against Jerusalem. There's prophets, all the prophets in the Bible, they spoke in terms of their own times. So things were pertinent to them in their own times, even though they're extrapolating from what they saw before their eyes in their own times to what will happen in the future. So when he talks about horses, he means chariots, or he means some type of armored vehicle. And it means that something will happen to them, to their methods of navigation, of seeing, that will work against them when they come up against Jerusalem. And we will wait and see, but this could well be the case. Valley and others, they attribute this whole scenario to the wars of Gog and Magog, when all the nations of the earth will come up against all of the tribes of Israel when they return. Ezekiel describes how the 10 tribes of Israel will reunite with Judah in the end times, and they will return to the land of Israel. And then Gog and Magog will come up and fight against them. So this could be part of these wars. We don't know, we'll wait and see, but it's worth keeping in mind. Valley also identifies the governors of Judah that Zechariah mentions being the heads of the tribes of Israel. And verse 7, Valley 12, Zechariah 12, verse 7, the Lord will save the tents of Judah first, so the glory of the house of David. And the glory of the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall not become greater than that of Judah. So in that day the Lord will defend the inhabitants of Jerusalem. The one who is feeble among them in that day shall be like David, and the house of David shall be like God, like the angel of the Lord before them. So when they compared the house of David to be like God, they use the term Elohim. Elohim in Hebrew can be translated as God. It can mean God, it depends on the context. It can also mean great man, as we find elsewhere in the Bible. Find him in the King of Saul, called up Samuel from the dead. through the witch at Endor, and the witch saw Samuel coming up out of the earth. She described him as Elohim, meaning a divine person, a great person. So the word Elohim can mean an angel, it can mean God, can mean judges, it can mean great men. It all depends upon the context. So David will be like this, will be some supernatural being, but also will be human in end times. And he says, verse 10, I will pour in the house of David on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. And then they will look on me whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him as one grieves for a firstborn. Now, this is how it's translated in English, as I read it. It says, and they will look on me whom they pierced. So this doesn't have to be mean me. It can also mean look on him whom they pierced. And in our commentary, I read a commentary that you can see on the internet concerning this expression. There's an explanation for it. It has parallels elsewhere in the Bible. At all events, the build of the sentence can be understood to mean they will look upon him who they pierced, according to the sages in the Talmud 52a, Sukkah, my second Sukkah 52a. This is referring to the Messiah, son of Joseph. This Messiah, son of Joseph, according to later sources such as the Malbim, will lead the lost 10 tribes in the end times when they return. Zechariah chapter 12 describes the nations of the earth coming against Jerusalem, coming against the Jews in the land of Israel, of putting against Israel all of their evil, all of their poison, all of their resentments, their feelings of inferiority, I don't know what, all their problems, their complexes, and put them all on the Jews, blaming the Jews for everything, and thinking that by taking Jerusalem, they can solve all their problems. That is how they think today. And that is how they will think even more in the future. They will come up and try to destroy Jerusalem and lay siege to Jerusalem. But they will be smitten, they will be struck by the Almighty with confusion. They will not see. Their navigational apparatuses will not work for them, and they will be defeated. And they will be defeated, and Judah will be vindicated. And so will the rest of the tribes of Israel. So we will not wait and see. We don't know how these things will turn out until they do turn out. But they are valid, they are feasible, they are realistic in the light of present reality. So, may God bless us and help us. Thank you.